Welcome to the Cactus Clouds Art Studio. I am Serena McRae. Today we are going to talk about publishing, printing, self-publishing. I have 4 different publications that I have created and I have used 3 different methods to do so. So let's go through them. Number 1, we're going to talk about Kickstarters and self-printing. Number 2, we're going to talk about Amazon KDP. And number 3, traditional publishing. Across these 4 publications, I have a deck of cards, a journal, a coloring book, and a traditionally printed how-to art guide. In order, these creations go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's start with the first one first. My first creation is called Affirmations Moms Actually Need. It is an affirmations deck for mothers. This project is what kickstarted my entire career as an artist. Very quick backstory. When I got married, I had my first child just a couple years after getting married. I was very young and my motherhood experience was immediately not what I expected it to be. I did not know at the time that I'm bipolar, that I have ADHD. Without knowing that, I wasn't medicating anything, and my motherhood experience just dove headfirst into severe postpartum depression. I had psychosis, probably as a side product of my bipolar disorder, like so many things that we're not going to go into right now. But for 6 years, I was so non-functional depressed. I created this when I finally started feeling that fog lifting and I dove into art and I decided to learn how to watercolor. Immediately upon learning how to watercolor, I started considering and thinking about the experience that I had had with mental illness and how difficult it was, and I started making these affirmations for moms. I started painting these different paintings and creating notes, and all of the notes come from things that people said to me that they thought was humorous or helpful but was actually harmful. I wrote down all of those things that people had said to me, and I figured out how to change the language and turn it around to something that was actually helpful. And thus is the name of the project, Affirmations Moms Actually Need. I started planning them out, I started illustrating them all, and then I had to figure out how I was going to bring them to life. And so at that point, I had a cousin who had run a Kickstarter and was experienced and offered his knowledge to me and immediately made Kickstarter not seem so scary. And then I talked with my brother, who gave me the advice to not start a Kickstarter unless I had at least 1,000 followers. I was updated recently with a friend who regularly uses Kickstarter, and she said that now they have a rule that you have to have 1,000 followers on your project before you can launch the Kickstarter itself. So that seems to be a very accurate place to set your sights if you want to do a Kickstarter. It took me 1 year, and throughout that year I was making these and I was sharing the messages, started sharing my story, and I started marketing this. I spent a full year on Instagram working on building my platform up to 1,000 followers, and this was in 2018 that I started. In 2019, I had completely finished designing this entire thing, and I was ready to dive in and start building the Kickstarter. During that time that I was also working on building 1,000 followers, I did my homework about Kickstarter, and there's things that you have to be wary of and plan out accordingly. I read all the stories, all these blogs. I read about people who offered their rewards internationally but didn't calculate for international shipping. There was one guy who had to sell his house to be able to afford to send out all of the rewards. I saw some people who calculated their math wrong and it ended up tanking their businesses. And it felt really intimidating, but there's also calculators on the internet that will help you figure all of that stuff out. And I chose to not ship the full deck internationally because it's different costs everywhere you ship. And so what I did was, for my international followers, I just sent out a card and I signed it for them. With this deck of cards that I made, I actually did 2 runs. The first run that I did was fully funded by a grant through my city, the city of Tucson. They have a arts grant that I applied for. With the first run of 50 copies, I started marketing. So I had a physical deck of these cards, so I started making videos. I started talking about what they were. I made my Kickstarter video to start getting people invested in the project. My Kickstarter was going to, I had a whole plan. I had a local gallery that was going to hang all of my cards. We were going to sell those cards to 100% of the proceeds would go to the gallery as my thanks, and people were going to be able to purchase their decks there. I had a videographer on hand. We were going to do interviews with people as they opened them together, and it was going to be really amazing. And that was scheduled the week of the curfews and lockdowns and how everything shut down economically right when COVID hit Tucson. It was literally the week of, I think it was going to be a Friday night, and that Wednesday there was a curfew initiated and everybody was talking about staying in your bubbles, and it was like a whole thing. And it was kind of horrifying, and it also felt like there was people already like dying everywhere. And so it felt like, is this the right time to be doing this? I don't know, ethically I really struggled. So obviously we didn't do the event and everything got put on pause. And I spent a couple of weeks trying to decide if it was something that I should continue working on or if I should sit and wait it out. And when it came down to it, I thought, if anybody needs this right now, it's all of the moms who are stuck at home all of a sudden trying to put their kids through homeschool. Like, this seems like the time, if there's any time, for supportive messages for moms. It's now. I moved the launch date of the Kickstarter back a month, and I moved all of the marketing digital. And that's when I asked people to send in videos of them opening the decks. People recorded videos going through and reading their favorite cards. People told their stories. There was people like pouring their hearts out about their own postpartum depression experiences. It was really incredible. And we launched the Kickstarter about a month later on a Friday, and it was fully funded by Sunday morning. And I set it up as a 60-day Kickstarter, so it continued to grow over 60 days. My original plan to print this deck of cards was to print 200. And by the time the Kickstarter was completed, I had enough money to print 1,000 copies. I designed the whole thing myself. I subscribed to Adobe Illustrator just long enough to design the box with the template from the printing company. It was exciting and it was really cool, and it was cool to have like the freight truck come to my house and drop off all of the boxes of over 1,000 decks of these cards. I'm so sorry, I had to switch to my phone camera. I used a local arts grant to fund the first 50 decks that I then used to market the Kickstarter. And I received enough money from the Kickstarter to go with a bigger quantity, which I was able to print from a bigger print company, which lowered the cost per deck about 50%. The first company I worked with did do small runs, which was Make Playing Cards. The second company I worked with was Print Ninja. Print Ninja does not do small runs, but with the larger runs, you pay less per deck, and they offered me the deal for additional decks. I think they sent me 70 additional decks if I put their banner on my Kickstarter printed by Print Ninja. And so now with that, I have these decks of cards, which fill an entire closet in my house, which is one of the downsides of doing printing on your own. But I keep these stocked in 3 different locations in Tucson, and I periodically reach out to people about them. I have had Mother's Wellness conferences purchase these decks. I have people reach out at different times. I've had doulas reach out and order them in bulk. Different programs for mothers. There was a program here in Tucson who supports reading for small children, preschool children, and they bought a whole bunch of decks so that they could gift them to the mothers who come to their program. And So it's less conventional. I have a whole closet devoted to this, which will probably be full for years. But over time, I have shared them in different community circles where support is offered for the mothers that I created these for. And so these are spread by word of mouth. I offer them on my website periodically. I get emails every few months from people who have received them as gifts for baby showers, or from their doula, or from their therapist. And so the experience with this is much different than traditional publishing. Now let's talk about my coloring book. This is a coloring book that I printed through Amazon KDP, which I created and just did it to try it out after meeting another artist at Tucson Comic-Con who does all of her printing through Amazon KDP. I found the process very interesting, and so I wanted to create something just to try it. This has, I think, 15 pieces of artwork that I illustrated. And the artwork features women from Tucson. I don't want to just draw women based on the proper proportions for a face. I want to draw real people. And so I asked people, send me a few pictures, like a profile picture, a straight on portrait. You can just be relaxed. You don't have to pose. You don't have to smile. Send me one standing, send me one sitting. And it was so much fun to create this artwork with real bodies from real women. It was really great. It was a very, very fun project. This was the perfect project to learn how Amazon KDP works. If you're not familiar with Amazon KDP, it's Kindle Direct Publishing. And it is problematic because anybody can upload anything on there pretty much and get it printed. And that's where we have tons of problems with people submitting books written by AI about mushroom foraging, and then people buy them and then poison their families on accident. Like, Amazon KDP is ethically problematic, but it's a great place to learn how to make a coloring book. That said, all of these are printed in America. They're generally printed in your own region. With Amazon KDP, basically what you do is you create a manuscript file and you choose what type of paper you want: paperback paper, premium paper, glossy full color paper. There's different types. You can choose softbound or hardbound, glossy or matte. The colors obviously are printed beautifully. You get an ISBN and a barcode. And then depending on how many pages, depends on if you have to make spine artwork or not, you make your cover. They even have an AI generator for the cover, which you don't want to do that because we don't like AI. But you can create your own cover. You upload everything, and then they tell you, based on everything that you've picked, what the printing cost is. And my book is about 15 pages, I think, maybe 16 pages. And my cost to print this is, I think, $250 per copy. It's a really low printing cost. And then from there, you get to choose how much it sells for on Amazon. You can go in at any time and you can adjust the price for how much it sells for. You get paid once a month from Amazon, and it's pretty straightforward. KDP is so popular and it's so inundated with things like coloring books that in order to make sales, you do have to advertise. So I have sales pretty much, if I talk about my book on social media, then I have sales come in. I would not say that I generally, it's not free money. You have to market and you have to tell people that it's there and you have to tell people how to find it because there's just so much on Amazon. And then there's the whole issue of if you even want to support Amazon. This was a type of publishing, self-publishing through Kindle that I really wanted to try, and I did. This is a very readily available intro to publishing that you could use in a lot of wholesome ways. I did a second project through Amazon KDP because people asked me to. This is my illustrated bookish journal. I was making videos sharing pages that I was creating on my own journal on Bookstagram, in my own book journal. I got so many comments from them, like, I wish I had time to do this. You know, I'm a mom and a teacher. Your journal is so cute. I wish that I had time to create something and to do bullet journaling at all. And so that's why I made this. But I created this because people liked what I was making and they expressed interest in wanting to bullet journal, but being busy teachers and mothers, they just didn't have the time. And so I made this for the people that expressed interest and asked me to. It's a lot of pages. There's blank bullet pages in the back, which I actually illustrated. Some of them are, the bullets are stars, and some of them the bullets are hearts, and some of them the bullets are just bullets. I have an introduction letter. Here's the book log. There's illustrated pages. There's graphs and charts and places to write quotes. And then there's a scrapbooking section where you can do your month in summation. And then there's the book review pages, and all the book review pages have different layouts. And I created it because people asked and because I knew how to use KDP at that point. This is one of my favorite murals that I've made. It is at Tucson's Art Hotel, Hotel McCoy. And I took a photograph of it and I recreated it digitally, which was something I was working on anyways. But then I thought it was just so beautiful. It was the perfect cover. And then I put from the studio of Cactus Clouds Art. This is a hardbound. It's the same matte finish as my coloring book. It is the same paper as my coloring book. And it's thicker, so I had to design a spine, which I did not have to do for the coloring book, so that's something to consider. When you work with Amazon KDP, they highly encourage you to get a test print sent to you, which was great that I did because I had a few pages that I had mixed up, and so there was like numbers and the numbers were off, and so I fixed that. So you can order a test print before you publish, and then the publishing, once you hit publish, it goes through a screening. If you have any artwork that goes to the edges, it'll ask you about that, and so you have to approve, yes, there is artwork that's going to go off to the edge and it'll get cut off with the margin. And so there's lots of quality things that you go through after you build the whole thing, but overall it is very self-explanatory. I did have to get a subscription to Adobe Acrobat in order to put all of my image files into one big PDF to send in as my manuscript. So that's an expense that is involved. Then the other thing is they ask you on KDP if it's a low content book or not. So a book with content gets an ISBN, and a low content book does not get an ISBN. So this one, I was like, well, there's words and there's art, so I wasn't sure. But because it is a journal, technically, whoever purchased it is putting in the content. And so this is a low content book, so there's no ISBN, and that's something else that you have to check in there. This one, I think it costs almost $9 to be printed, and I sell it for $32, and I chose the price based on a poll from all of the people who asked me to create it. I just chose an average of that, and I sell it for $32. And again, this one I have to actively market it. I usually don't get sales on Amazon from this unless I have shared a video on TikTok or YouTube or somewhere. Everybody who's gotten it has loved it so far. The last thing to know about Amazon KDP is that you can order author copies to sell wherever you want. And they are simply the cost of the printing and then to have it shipped. And they are primable. So if you have a Prime account, then you can order your author copies and then we'll prime them to you and you don't pay shipping. The woman who taught me all about Amazon KDP, her name is Jessica, and she does rare dragons. And she has a Patreon. She uses this tool so that she can be as independent as possible and create whatever she wants. I mentioned the ethical gray area of Amazon KDP. And the big benefit of it is that you can pretty much create anything that you want. And so if you want to be as independent as possible in printing and distributing whatever you want to create, you can use Amazon KDP to do that. I can't think of a lot of downsides of this printing process. The only thing is there's usually glue. There's usually glue on the covers of these hardbounds. And I think there's a little bit, I don't know if you can see it shimmering, but there's always a little bit of glue smears, and you just wash them off with alcohol. So I've never had these printed and shipped directly to the bookstores that sell them for me that are local. I have them shipped here so that I can go through and I can quality control and I can use alcohol to remove all the glue smears. And then I deliver them. They've been selling really well at 3 different locations here in Tucson, 2 bookstores and a gift shop. That's everything on Amazon KDP. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask. And of course, I learned all about using Kickstarter, self-publishing printing, and using Amazon KDP while I was waiting to figure out how to go the traditional route with a traditional publishing situation. My book is not out yet. It comes out in October, and I published with Rocky Nook, who is a smaller publishing house, and I loved working with them. I want to talk for a second about how I connected with them, how I found them. I wanted to find an agent, find a publisher so that I could share this with the world. In the end, they found me. So let's take a second to talk about that. I'm gonna set this down because my hand is tired of holding things. What I learned about traditional publishing, and I didn't even go a traditional route on this. So this is just what I learned and what I ended up doing. What I learned is you have to find an agent before you can just throw your book at a publishing house. There is a database, and I'll see if I can find it again so I can add it here. But there is a database of agents that you can go through with their contact information, and it'll take you to their website where they have a list of parameters that you must meet to send a query letter. Everybody's is a little bit different. They'll say they'll say send me a Word document, or send me a PDF, or send me your first chapter, or just send me a summary, or pitch it to me. And everybody has a different list of things that they want you to send. And then they all say, if you don't follow these rules, then your email is just going to get deleted, which is completely fine and is great for them because I'm sure everybody gets so many inquiries all the time. But I have ADHD and executive function is hard. And the biggest places where I make mistakes is in all those little details. I constantly make mistakes in document writing, in all of those types of things. It's one of the things where my disability really shows. And so as I started going through, the list was overwhelming. I picked a handful of random people. I pulled up their websites. I made a list of what each of them wanted in the query letter. And I started working on one. And I made so many mistakes, and I had to constantly go back and forth creating this email compared to their list of requirements for the email that I freaked out. Someone just knocked on my door and I freaked out when I said freaked out. So I freaked out and I just stopped searching entirely for a while because it was really difficult. Like I said, I think it's good that they have parameters, and I think as an agent you have to do that. But as somebody with ADHD who works really hard and still regularly makes mistakes, it was incredibly intimidating. And so from there, I was like, this is hard for me and I'm going to lose it before I ever get an email back. So I decided to instead focus on what I know. And what I know is social media marketing, and search engine optimization, SEO. These are the things that I understand. I understand how to make myself searchable on the internet. Instead of looking for an agent, I started talking on social media about the book I was writing. I started making posts, sneak peeking the manuscript. I started teaching tutorials, and I started posting tutorials. And in my caption, I'd say, if anyone knows an agent, I'm looking because I'm writing this book. And people would say, wow, this tutorial is so great. Thank you so much. And I say, thanks. I can't wait to share my book with the world. If you know an agent. And I just started putting it out there. I had an article published about this project when I was stamping 100 erasers. I had an article published in my local paper. in a couple different entities of the local paper. So that was online as a news article. I used that to get verified on Instagram. So now I look like the public figure with the blue check mark. And I started just putting myself out there. I spoke at a nerd night where I took everybody through the growth of the Pink Eraser project. I just dove into sharing my project with the world and regularly speaking out loud that I was writing a how-to book and looking for a publisher and an agent. I manifested it. Manifesting it was entirely just marketing out to the world. I have an idea. I know that it's going to serve people. I have proof that people are already excited about it. And here's my desires. I'm looking for an agent. I'm looking for a publisher. I'm already writing a book. When it came down to it, my publisher emailed me and they said, we've seen this trend. We looked into the trend and it looks like you're the person to talk to. Are you interested in writing a how-to book on Pink Eraser art? And I got to email them back and say, actually, I already am. And I am the person who blew this whole thing up in 2022 on TikTok. And I was the root of the trend. And I am working on a book, and I have been teaching tutorials online and in person to create content for this book and learn what people need to know and what people need help with. I've been researching this for a whole year. Yes, I would love to talk to you about publishing this book. It went from there. The experience writing the book, I spent a year creating my 100 erasers and just creating the trend as a worldwide global artistic movement that people were very excited about, making art very available to everybody. When I got intimidated about finding an agent and sending all those query letters, I just made myself incredibly loud on the internet about this book that I wanted to write and that I wanted to teach people more, that I was looking for a publisher and an agent. And so that's where I put my focus, and they found me. The people who were excited about the idea and already knew that this was something that worked with their publishing house they wanted to do, they found me. We had a phone call and we talked about expectations, and I interviewed them as much as they interviewed me to see if we were a good fit with each other. And I had to do my homework too, because they were a small publishing company. They weren't, I wasn't talking to like Simon and Schuster or whoever. I wasn't talking to bigwigs. I was talking to a small company. I did homework on their publications and I read through their website and I learned more about them. And the things that they told me is publishing with a small publisher. The big differences are a smaller advance. I wouldn't get as huge of an advance as if I was publishing with a bigger company. And I would get more say in everything about my book. I would be able to give a lot more feedback and have more of a hand in the building of the physical book itself. I loved working with Rocky Nook through the writing and the editing process because I did get a lot of say in everything. It's just things like I could send them an email and say, can we make this image a full page so it goes, across all the margins to the edge of the page, because I think it'd be really beautiful that way. And they were like, yeah, cool. And so I really got to have a hand in building the entire book. They also gave me 100 additional pages than what was originally listed. So my book was listed originally as 124 pages. And in the end, my book is 220 pages. So that's another thing that I think I was able to push and get away with by working with a smaller company. My project with traditional publishing, now that I'm saying it, doesn't sound like it was a very traditional experience, because I did not find an agent and I just manifested the crap out of the dream until somebody found me. I went with a small publishing company where I got to have a lot of say and freedom in designing the book, which I think was a lot more than I would have gotten with a larger traditional publishing house. With publishing with my publisher, I got a smaller advance, which I learned about how advances work, and I was like, I'm actually fine with that. That's fine. I wrote my book incredibly fast. I did all of the photographs myself. We worked back and forth on organizing all of the files to communicate where everything belonged in the book, and I got to have a lot of say in that. Additionally, I have an affiliate link on their webpage where people can order my book, and then I get a little bit more percentage for that sale than I would just for being the author. And I don't know if that would be the same with a large publishing house, but I like it. And I loved working with the smaller team, and their ideals as a small business were the same as my ideals with focusing on local business and small business. So we were just a really fantastic fit, which was great because I just feel like the right people found me. That said, working with the smaller publisher, they do work with Ingram, which is one of the biggest distributors. And so even though they're a small publishing team, they work with a huge distributor that's global. And so my book from the small publisher will be and is going to be available across the globe. I've searched all of the big booksellers in different countries as people ask me. That it's available in Australia, it's available at Blackwell's in the UK, it's available at, I think, Indigo is the big bookseller in Canada. And so I've been searching and looking, and it's available as an ebook. The ebook was published in the summer, so I've already been getting reviews in from people. So all of that said, I've done a few different experiments with publishing and printing. They've all been very interesting, and I have learned things, and I have earned dollars from my work in different ways. I'd say the most fun option was the Kickstarter, because running a Kickstarter and watching the numbers go up over a single weekend was like one of the highlights of my life. And it was really incredible seeing so many people get excited and share my story on social media and telling people about my project. Amazon KDP was so cool because I could just try something. I mean, you could just spend a few weeks putting something together and put it together and then put it out in the world, or get it printed so you could distribute it locally. So the availability to print and publish a book through Amazon KDP is really incredible. It makes access to printing a book very accessible. And then, of course, this one, I mean, this is my chance to have a book in, I don't know, Barnes and Noble. This is my chance to actually have a book with my name on it on shelves in stores. And that's really cool and exciting. So I feel like I've gone through all of these different avenues, and I hope sharing my experiences with each one has been helpful for you. Definitely drop questions in the comments if you have them, and I am happy to share any other information or questions that you guys have. I'm happy to share. So here they are. My 4 publishing projects come from lots of different backgrounds and options and ways to create these things. And I hope that this video has been helpful to you and has given you insight. Bye.